They show 8,000, almost 9,000 are missing, and 2,000 have been injured. Through all this, one thing we haven't seen much of is violence, chaos, looting, something we've seen in other disasters across the world, even here in the United States. Japanese-American actor and activist George Takei joins us now to talk about how Japan is dealing with the tragedy. You will obviously recognize him for his role in Star Trek or as an announcer on the Howard Stern show. George, thank you for joining us. Good to see you. How are your friends and family doing in Japan?
I was concerned about them, and I checked first thing Friday morning. They have all checked in well. The friends are scattered all over the Tokyo area and the Osaka area, and that's a little distance from where the tsunami and the earthquake happened. So I'm very grateful for that.
George, let's talk a little bit about, is there something cultural in Japan? The word you gave us, how do you say that, Gaman?
Gaman. Gaman on the first syllable.
What does that mean?
It means to endure with fortitude and dignity, self-restraint, control. And, you know, because Japan is a very densely populated country, you have to be respectful of others and exercise self-restraint. And it's really moving and powerful to see people who I'm sure are experiencing great anguish, having lost family and loved ones, to be so orderly and dignified in that. It reminds me of when I was growing up as a child in the U.S. internment camps. We had to line up for everything there. And I remember one incident. My mother, I was a child, we had a little baby, my sister, and we regularly lined up for medicine for her. And I had to go to the bathroom, and I told my mother, I need to go. And she said, Gaman, hold it, be dignified. And I couldn't, and I slightly wet myself. It was very embarrassing, but it's that I see again in the pictures that we see on our television screen. It's very moving.
George, what are the limits of Gaman? At what point do the Japanese say, I'm not sure that the authorities know what they're talking about or what they're doing? Is it based on trust for authority, or is it based on something else?
Well, the alternative is to start shouting, complaining, and what is that going to do? It's just going to make the situation worse. So it's better to restrain yourself. And if you see that there might be something questionable, you gather together collectively. Japan is a very collectivist society, and they work in concert with others. And in doing that, you have to exercise restraint as well as endure some people who might not be quite as restrained as you are.
Here's something interesting, though, that collectivist society is very helpful in a disaster like this. We have found people going back into those nuclear plants to try and deal with the situation. So this Gaman doesn't stop you. Dignity and that reserve doesn't stop the Japanese from solving the problem and going in and trying to deal with the tragedy.
Well, there again, there's Gaman. They are members of a community. So they know that they're taking a high risk, but they bear it, they endure it, fortitude, and for the sake of the others, they go in to keep the situation in the nuclear plants from getting worse. It's a remarkable cultural trait. I think it's a very distinctive thing to the Japanese, and I'm, a third-generation Japanese-American, but I remember growing up with that concept.
Well, a lot of people, I know you and I have both been tweeting about this, and a lot of people were very interested in hearing this conversation and also saying, I wonder what lessons the rest of the world can learn from the Japanese and from Gaman. So thanks for sharing this with us, George. It's great to see you.
May I add, in the spirit of Gaman, for Americans and everyone as human beings, to help bring some aid to the Japanese. At
Absolutely.
a crisis time like this, we are all Japanese.
We are all Japanese. I saw that you tweeted that the other day, and the world is definitely the sympathies and the efforts of the world are with Japan right now. Thanks, George. Good to see you. Thanks very much for being on.
Thank you.
George Takei. You remember him as Mr. Sulu from Star Trek. Don't forget, CNN.com is more than